You're watching Beardown Sports, the best Chicago Bears content. Now buckle up and bear down.
All right, everybody, welcome back and bear down. Thanks for tuning in today. Looks like we got a decent amount of people popping in. Bears gang, welcome to the show. We did have a little switch up last minute. Swifty was going to come on. He had a family emergency, if you didn't see in the comment section there. Had a little family emergency, and you guys know how I feel. Family always comes first. So no crazy emergency. Don't be asking questions like it's just a small thing. So no stress, and don't be going to Swifty and being like, all right, there's something crazy. No, it's not something crazy. He just had something that took priority. That's all. So he actually said he might pop in for the live feed for the draft. So draft is 1 week from today. 1 week from today, everyone. I'm so stoked, and I know you guys are too. Oh, what's going to happen? So we do have a great guest that filled in last second. Want to thank him. I feel bad because I bailed on him earlier in the week. Wasn't able to make what he wanted me to come in for, but it is Paul from Bearskifilm. If you haven't checked it out, I haven't introduced his channel. Check out his channel. He's got some good stuff. He has a good way of breaking down film. I'm very excited to have him on. We got a couple of really good things lined up for you. So let me go ahead and bring him in. All right, Paul, thanks for joining us today. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everyone who you are and where they can find you. You got a pretty solid YouTube channel, so introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. So just run Bearskifilm, so youtube.com/Bearskifilm. Do a lot of highlight videos, do some podcast videos. We try and do weekly during the season, but throughout the off season it gets a little bit slow. I also kind of want to give a shout out to my guys at Windy City End Zone Football. They do a weekly podcast show as well. And yeah, if you haven't checked out that website, there's a ton of great writers on there, and as well as some Bearskifilm videos. So yeah, glad to be on. Thanks for the invite, and yeah, happy to talk some Bears.
And what's the handle of your YouTube channel so people can check you out and go there?
Just Bearskifilm, just like the banner says. Yep. You just type that in and all one word, and it should pop right up.
I've subscribed. You guys should subscribe too. Absolutely 100%. So let's get into it right off the bat. A couple of big things. I always do this on my channel. I'm going to bring it up here right off the bat. A couple of additions. The top 30 visits are now officially over. They're done. As of the 17th, yesterday, that's the last day, teams can have players into their facility to work them out, to do testing, to do drills, to do mental aptitude, to do anything they need to do. And on here, I just want to point out a couple of the last minute ones. Austin Booker, defensive end from Kansas, was one we heard about last minute. He's kind of in that second round tier defensive end. And then Audric Estime, who I put on a couple of my mock drafts from Notre Dame, running back in the 4th round, is also come on there last minute. So, Paul, tell me some of your thoughts about what you think when you see the top 30 visits and how they laid out, what ended up happening with them, and kind of where you think Ryan Pohl's mentality might have been as they went through some of these top 30 visits.
Definitely you can see that, they scouted all the top guys for sure. From the wide receivers to the defensive ends, even, the tight end, Brock Bowers, and Byron Murphy's another guy I like. So definitely did their homework on the top end of the draft. And, we're going to need, we only have 4 picks, and pick one that's pretty much, a foregone conclusion. So really you're only looking at adding 3 more players to the offense outside of the quarterback, to the team outside of the quarterback. So, we are going to have some later picks, but not too many. So I do like how they focused on a lot of these high first round and second round grades.
Yeah, really it seems like he left his options open. If there was ever a time to tip his hand, he didn't tip his hand to us as fans. We always like to read the tea leaves and see what he's trying to do, and I do that a lot on my channel. But he really left it ambiguous to us, interviewing all or bringing in and working out all 3 of the main top wide receivers, bringing in the main 4 defensive ends, and then your main offensive tackles. Well, most of them. We didn't hear anything about Joe Alt, but the assumption is he would be gone well before 9. And then, like you said, Byron Murphy, even Brock Bowers, J.C. Latham, even the top centers. So it makes us think, could there be a trade back? Could he be just trying to figure out which one he wants? We know he talked about the pods, and so they're definitely doing their discussions. It leaves it open to anything. Where do you think he's leaning at this point in the first round? Because I've gone back and forth. I want one of those top wide receivers. I want a defensive end. I want a small trade back. What do you think he's kind of leaning towards with everything he's done so far with the top 30s being done?
So, I mean, it's hard to tell because, like you said, Ryan Poles does a very good job not showing his hand. And so, we all have different opinions. There's all these different narratives out there of what people want. And, I have my own, but you can see every one of those opinions is really kind of covered by the visits. Like, yeah, if you wanted Rome Odunze, they visited with him. If you wanted Dallas Turner, if he falls, they visited with him, So I have no idea what Ryan Poles is going to do. I do know that this team, when you look at it as a whole, it's set up very well as far as starters, but there's a lot of lack of depth here still. And some of it is pretty critical. And so to go into it with, like I said, 3 picks outside of the first overall pick, that just may not be enough. So, my personal favorite option really is to trade back in a lot of different scenarios and try and pick up more picks. However, I also do understand that the possibility of them, you see some of these second round guys up there, and there's a possibility that they may use some future draft capital to try and trade up from the third to the second if they like a guy, if he falls a little bit too far. So, it's really, that's why the draft's so fun. It's really how the draft order falls. Like I said, I hope that we would trade back and pick up some more picks, but at the same time, there might be a player there that you may just not be able to pass up, especially with there being some critical positions in need.
Yeah, and as much as I love doing the multi-haul draft pickups, trading down to 13, trading down again to 18 or 21, Ryan Poles has shown if he loves someone, just like last year with Darnell Wright, it doesn't matter where everybody else has them placed on their boards. Everyone else kept saying, well, we should trade back a couple and still pick up Darnell Wright. Well, he did. He technically traded back 1 spot, but he wasn't willing to trade back and get behind some other teams that needed tackles because he saw Darnell Wright as the number 1 tackle for him. He saw him as the guy that he wanted. He wasn't going to risk it. So if one of those guys like Latu, who everyone questions the medicals, but if he says, I want him at 9, or even Chop Robinson, who everyone has in their 20s, and he says he's the perfect fit for Chicago, I'm taking him at 9, it might make some fans wrinkle their eyebrow, but it doesn't mean that he's going off his game plan because all that matters is his draft board at the end of the day, and then we get to see how that pick panned out. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because your draft board says it's a certain way that it means it's going to be Ryan Poles a certain way.
Right, and with that being said, too, real quick, like I said, it's kind of how the draft order falls, too. If it's really heavy on 2 positions, say, you get a bunch of quarterbacks that go and a couple wide receivers that go, and now you're still left with your choice of any defensive player, well, then you still may be more inclined to drop back a little bit and feel good about, having multiple different options there at pick 13, for example, or pick 14. So,
yeah, I personally love the idea of just trading back, and what's going to happen is if it turns out that he loves 7 or 8 guys, is what it comes down. Because if he only loves 1 person, you're not trading back from 9. You're taking that guy at 9. But if he likes multiple of these guys, if he likes Latu, if he likes Verse, if he likes Byron Murphy, if he likes multiple of them, trading down from 9 to 13 and picking up that second rounder, that's what I like that idea, because then you can still pick up a Zach Frazier. You can still pick up your wide receiver. You can pick up a Ladd McConkey or even a Ben Sennett, who a lot of people think that would be a reach, but you'd come up and get him. So let me go through our depth chart. It's something I like to do on here as well. And I'm going to pick your brain because let's pull up the D-line first, who we've been talking about. So I kind of categorize them how I have them on here. This isn't the Bears official. This is how I list them out. So I've got my starters, my backups, my depth, and guys who I consider practice squad and cut candidates. Because we have these signings during the offseason. We have players that we pick up and we sign to league minimum contracts. And a lot of fans see that as, oh, we filled that hole. But the reality is you're bringing 90 guys in for training camp. You're going to have a 90-man squad that you then cut down to 63 or 53, and you get it down to where you go into the season. So a lot of these guys, even Dominic Robinson, who we had on the team last year, you see I have him on the bottom of the list. He's not panning out. He's not working out, in my opinion. This might not be how the Bears see it, but I've got the guys that are locks to be the team on the top row there. There are starters, even Zach Pickens. But then Byron Cowart, right now, he's on the team. We signed him. Jacob Martin's on the team. We signed him. but I have two big X's above them because I can see them easily being replaced during the draft or as a critical need for us. What do you think our biggest needs are on this defensive line first?
Definitely right where you have it. I agree. A defensive end and then interior defensive line. They're almost neck and neck, 1A, 1B for me. And, that's to pair that up with positional values in the draft. When you take a look throughout the league at, you know, top 10 defensive ends, top 10 defensive tackles, contract wise, if these guys are getting paid, that means they're out there performing, right? And then you kind of just take the average draft position of those guys, you find that defensive ends and defensive tackles go in round one. There, to get premier guys at that position, you got to draft them in the first round. Typically, there are some outliers. I know Max Crosby was a 4th-round pick, but guys like Nick Bosa, that's a 2nd overall pick. Guys like Myles Garrett, that's a 1st overall pick. I mean, so these guys go high, and they do make a giant impact. We could definitely use somebody across from Montez Sweat, and then have DeMarcus Walker be that backup position. With the interior defensive line, Javon Dexter, Andrew Billings, and then, we have 3rd-round pick Zach Pickens in there. And then, it kind of gets hazy after that. And, we run a 4-3, so you typically like 5 of those guys on the roster, in my opinion. So these are both critical needs, in my opinion, and they need to be addressed fairly early in the draft if you're going to address them appropriately. If not, you're just going to be finding bodies to fill in there.
Well, that's kind of what we have right now. You look at that Jacob Martin. He's not made it in the NFL. He's really fighting basically to be on a team at this point, and he'd be a Khalid Kareem. He'd be a defensive end 5. So I know a lot of people, and I just saw one, Eric Harper right there, trade down. We snag defensive end next year with this stat class. You mentioned that Nick Bosa went 2nd, but do you see in this class, do you see Jared Verse, Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, Chop Robinson? Do you see any of them as that high quality, though, where they're worth taking at number 9 in this draft class?
That's why my preferred choice is to trade back, because I still think you can get one of those guys, because the depth is there, it seems like, this year in this draft. And I know next year's draft is supposed to be stacked with them too, but this is a year-to-year thing. If you can address it this year and you like one of those guys, personally, Dallas Turner is a very good all-around player. I've heard some people that came on my podcast say that if he was the guy that fell to 9, he may be the guy that you just can't pass up. Unfortunately, the team needs are the team needs. And, I know you mentioned earlier that you might like a guy. That's great, but you have to sit there and weigh that with how many guys do we need, right? Because at some point, the value may be in quantity this year and just kind of helping get some depth going, even if it's not premier. But I don't know. Pick 9, I guess Dallas Turner, I Jared Verse maybe, but that would be about it. But still, my first preference is trade back.
See, and that's exactly where I am, and so many fans are. In fact, I see. I'm going to post this one. Bearlissimo, who I've had some good chats with on Twitter, would be a waste of a high top 10 pick in this year's draft to take a D lineman high this year. I 100% agree with that. That's why I love the idea of trading back. But you look at it, when Montez Sweat wasn't here, this team struggled hard. When he came, the Tez effect came. But then look behind him. We have nobody. Jacob Martin, Khalid Kareem, Daniel Hartley, Dominic Robinson. These are guys to be fighting for a 5 position, defensive end 5. We really need a 3 and a 4. So with the idea and mentality of possibly waiting till next year, I don't know if you can. So the idea of trading back from 9 and say just go into 13, if we can get 13 and 44 from the Raiders, picking up one this year that can fight with DeMarcus Walker, that can really rotate in and get some experience, and then still drafting one next year, because DeMarcus Walker's still very short term with us left this year and next year, but really could be just this year, depending on how he does it. As long as he plays as well as he did at the end of the year, he'll be here both years. But there's definitely need there on the defensive inside, which is why I went from originally saying we got to have the wide receiver to now I'm kind of on the defensive end side, but exactly what Bearlissimo said in the comments, it's too high. In this draft class, none of these guys blow my socks off. Even Dallas Turner, who I see as a 3-4 more than a 4-3, I can't justify taking him at 9. So let me pull up here. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, real quick, and then, just to that point, him saying a waste of a high pick this year would be to take a D lineman. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I study college football inside and out, but it's their job to do so. So it's on Ryan Poles and his staff to determine if they like, a certain guy or not, or if they think it'd be the right fit and whatnot. So,
Of course.
however, when it comes to the team needs, it's definitely need. I mean, you got to weigh out your options. Otherwise, what you might be trying to offer Yannick Ngakoue another deal, or like what else is there? You're
No.
going to need somebody else in there. No, exactly. No is
Yeah,
right. So but that's why I think we're on the same page. That I hear you. It might be a waste of a high pick. That's why you want to trade back, in my opinion. And I think we're on the same page with that. I think that would be the best option in this scenario going into this draft.
Yeah, fly on the wall. If we could all just be a fly on the wall right now, man. Let's go over to the offensive playmakers. Yeah, and with the whole Yannick thing, this is part of the reason I started my channel is because I was so opposed to that, and I was in so many chat rooms like yelling at people on Swifty's channel and on some other channels, just like, no, we don't want him, but we need it. We need to address that position, but the other position we don't address ever. Really, two of them, wide receiver as well. So let's go over there. This is where we stand on the offensive playmakers. I call them the playmakers. You talk about the offensive line. Now we go to the backfield. You've got our wide receivers. You got the quarterbacks. You got the slot, tight ends. And the big buzz right now is everyone talking, and it changes every day. You hear it. Yesterday it was Byron Murphy. The day before it was Dallas Turner. Last week it was offensive tackle position with J.C. Latham coming in, and could Joe Alt drop to 9? And now everyone's talking about Brock Bowers and how he could fit with the Bears. And it's true because Shane Waldron runs multiple sets. He runs 12 personnel. He runs 13 personnel. He runs 11 personnel. And a lot of people say, well, why didn't he run more 12 personnel in Seattle this last year? Because clearly it was an issue. And just so everyone's clear, we've talked about it before. I'm not going to do a huge breakdown on it, but personnel sets just mean how many tight ends. The last number is how many tight ends are on the field. So 11 personnel just means one running back, one tight end. 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends, and so on and so on. And sometimes you can run 13 personnels, which would be a situation if you draft Brock Bowers. In fact, let's pull him up real quick. Here's Brock Bowers. I haven't done a big video on him yet, so I'm just going to bring him up here. Here's some of his metrics from NFL Draft Buzz, and him compared to the other two tight ends that we have. Now, note, Brock Bowers in red is his college stats. And college stats always come down when you transition to the NFL, especially at the tight end level. There is an adjustment to be made at the tight end level, or at the tight end position. But his drop rate is low. His contested catches are good. His receiving grade, which would be the next one, PFF receiving grade, is solid for college. His pass blocking grade, solid. Run blocking grade, solid. He's really a glorified X receiver playing tight end that can block. So there's a lot they could do with him that could mix up, that could really keep the defenses on their toes. And I like the idea of it. Do you think Brock Bowers is someone that we could draft at 9? With all this buzz going around, is he someone you would want to take a flyer on at 9? When you hear the other stuff about how that position, you usually want to draft higher positions where they're a higher valued contract position, and tight end isn't one of those top tier positions like quarterback and wide receivers turning into defensive end, like you mentioned. Would you take a flyer on Brock Bowers at 9?
Me personally, no, I would pass. However, there is he's a really good football player. From everything I've seen, he's a great player, and there is this mentality that you take the best player available, and if he's there at 9 and you apply that to that situation, that could makes sense if you're following that type of rhetoric. Me personally, I just, like I said, I look at the needs on the team. I just don't feel that tight end is that big of a need where we'd have to get one at pick 9. And, even if he's a great player and whatnot, I would pass him up. I would try and trade back. We need other positions more, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. As we go back and look, you also see that we brought in Ben Sinnott. How do you feel about Ben Sinnott from Kansas State?
I haven't done too much research on him, like I said, just because I don't feel that that's a big position of need. So it was one of my things that I kind of just looked at the top guy and skipped over. So I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know much about Ben Sinnott, but you have any insight?
Yeah, I think he's pretty well-rounded. I think he's solid on all aspects, like Brock Bowers, just not consistent enough, and hasn't got quite the clout. I think one more year in college, and he would be approaching a Brock Bowers level, not the same level of hype as in a lot of people talk about Brock Bowers as if he's the next, what's his name in San Francisco? I always get brain farts when we're live. George Kittle.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about Brock Bowers like he could be the next George Kittle. I don't think Ben Sennett's there, but I think he's a tight end that could develop to be a very, very solid Cole Kmet type of tight end, and that's how I see him. A lot of people on this channel also.
Go ahead. You know where George Kittle was drafted? What round?
I don't remember.
Fifth round pick.
Fifth round, yeah. Some of these tight ends.
So he went late. You can snap those guys, and those guys take. They usually get a little cushion for development too. They don't come in and typically make an impact right away either. It takes 2-3 years for them to develop. I know even with Cole Kmet, we saw some very poor blocking early on in his career, and that is something he made sure to improve on in order to be able to earn the contract that he earned. He's a much better blocker now than he was when he entered the league. So if it would be an interesting choice if they took him. But yeah, I personally would pass.
I'm with you. It seems like we're pretty lined up on most things so far. Okay, so possibly taking defensive end, trading back a little bit. Not down on taking tight end in the first round, which I'm with you. I like Brock Bowers, but I would rather us take Ben Sinnott. And a lot of people who have watched this channel know from the very beginning of my mock drafts, I'm in love with Cade Stover. He's a farm boy. He doesn't ever drop anything. He's a converted linebacker. He's just tough as nails. I love Cade Stover. I'd love to take him in the third or fourth round if he falls, because a lot of play, and we don't know how the draft boards fall out for individual teams, but he seems like on every mock draft fall into the fourth round now. So snag me up for Cade Stover all day. So we're on the same line there. What other positions would you consider at number 9?
And here's where I get the most, like you said, we've been agreeing so far. Here's where we might split a little bit, because I get a lot of slack for, really ultimately my number one thing is trade back. I just think that, and if not defensive end, outside of that, I'm one that, like, even if Marvin Harrison Jr. fell to 9, I would be happy because I'd be getting a bigger haul for trading back.
Whoa.
And I'd pass him up too. I would. You
wouldn't take Marvin at 9.
Well, no, because one, it's the position of need is wide receiver 3, and I mean I get that you're doing it for the future, but you look at these guys around the league that have been drafted top 10 in the history, and not many of them have gone off and actually had Super Bowl rings in their careers. You look at guys throughout history that were good wide receivers, guys like T.O. that had, Hall of Fame caliber talent, and due to their attitude and whatnot, they bounced around 5 teams. And then you look at other situations like Antonio Brown being a 5th round pick, Tyreek Hill being a 5th round pick, Cooper Kupp being a 3rd round pick. Last year, Puka Nacua set records as a 5th round pick. These guys are deep. So if you can get a wide receiver, we still need a wide receiver. I'm not saying we don't. I'm just not willing to take one at 9. And I think I would much more prefer the haul it would bring me if he dropped back, rather than to take one player. I just think this team still needs more depth. It really does. And listen, I just want to say, I'm not opposed to the idea in general. I just think you have to be in position to do it. The Eagles were in position to do it a couple of years ago when they drafted Devonta Smith. They had a pretty complete team, and that's when you could go ahead and take a guy like that. That's not where we're at. I still feel we're pretty depleted, and therefore we still need to address that first. And so, yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. I know it's not popular.
No, I agree with you with it that we're not quite there. That's why so many fans like the idea of the haul. That's why I preach the haul so much. The problem is, yes, you get some of these outliers like Puka Nacua and some of these guys in the 4th, 5th round, but really, out of the last 5 drafts, anybody who's been a 1,000-yard receiver has come from the 1st and 2nd round. 25 out of the 30 of them. There's only 5 that haven't been. So it's proven that your top tier guys always at wide receiver. Now, does that translate to Super Bowls? Not if you're not a well-rounded team. More than anything, I always preach it's a team game. Offensive tackles, offensive guards, centers. Center killed us last year. Absolutely slaughtered us. We were one of the worst in the league. Look what it did to the Giants. The Giants were a decent team. They drafted center, but they didn't have anybody else to teach him or support him. John Michael Schmitz was highly, highly touted. He ended up being the 36th out of 36 graded center in the league, which is part of why I love the idea of what you're saying. Trade back, even if it's not a huge haul, trade back to 13, still pick up that defensive end because we're so lacking there at defensive end. Pick one up this year, pick one up next year too. And then in the second round, pick up a center, bring him in. Have him learn behind Coleman Shelton. Have him learn from Ryan Bates, guys that have played in the league, that have gone there. Because other than that, we have a pretty solid offensive line. But just like you said, depth isn't there for us. We signed Jake Curhan, we signed Matt Pryor, but these guys are guys that aren't making it in the league. They're bouncing from teams, having horrible PFF grades, having more than that on film, letting sacks come through, letting issues happen. How do you feel about the depth? Because I put a lot of these guys down there at the practice squad cut level when a lot of fans might not agree with that. They might not see Tyree Carter that way. They might think that we've added a ton because we signed, four names, but they weren't four huge names. Coleman Shelton, probably the biggest one because of his starting experience. What do you think when you say we're not quite there yet? What do you think needs to happen on this line or on the core here of the offense to be able to improve that?
So initially you laid out what my ideal scenario for the draft would be. It would be to trade back, still take a defensive end. Second round, you look at centers. You wind up getting a center. There should be some good options in the second round. So, and then after that, you can still address wide receiver in the third round with your third round
or
pick.
We can even trade up, like you said. You said we could trade up from 75 if there's someone there like Lad McConkey or Xavier Legette's falling.
Right. Yeah. You have 10 picks next year. Exactly. So you could still wind up getting a guy. You could trade back up if one of the guys you really like is there. But, the impact of that, so that would help out the line a lot if you drafted any one position, if you drafted a left tackle, if you drafted a center. One of those guys that you have on the bottom is going to wind up being bumped up and being just a guy, a body, whether it's, Tyree Carter or, Larry Borum or whoever. But that's just due to need. That, like I said, not everybody's going to be a great piece on the team. It's still a pretty thin roster at the end of the day. So, with the wide receiver position too, I just kind of wanted to mention that as far as immediate impact goes, you have Tyler Scott at that position, right? So say everything's unicorns and rainbows and lollipops and everything goes great and Caleb's throwing the ball and, so Tyler Scott's going to give you what, 300-400 yards? Probably.
You'd hope. Yeah, that's what you're hoping to see, a little more breakout, a little improvement from last year. Yeah.
If I see Roma Dunze in that position, I'm expecting 500 to 700 yards, maybe. It's not that big of
or more. If you're taking him 9 to 13 overall, and 9, if you got to get him at 9, if you're taking him 9 overall, you want to see 700 plus at least.
Right, and I just don't think it depends on what Keenan Allen's role in the offense will be then. Because I like how you have him listed here as the slot, which is actually probably the preferred position for him. So, yeah, there is some type of need for that. But like I said, in my opinion, I just think the trade back in this situation is just be much more worth it than taking any of those guys high. So, yeah, Xavier Legette is a guy I do like. You could look at both the guys that Caleb played with in college, Brendan Rice. You could look at Taj Washington. Taj Washington, I believe, is projected to go even later in the 5th round pick, and you could argue that he was one of the more solid receivers on that team. So
the most solid. I think he had the most yards, and he had the best passer rating. Maybe Brendan actually had a better passer rating, NFL passer rating when targeted, but yeah, he definitely wasn't a scrub at all.
Right. So you can still get a guy that can make enough of an impact. Whereas on the other side of things, like I said, what are our options? Is it Yannick Ngakoue then? Because I'd rather just draft a defensive end. You know what I mean? High in the first round, in the mid-first round. It just seems to make more sense to me. So
I think either way, we might still take a flyer on a defensive end. There's going to be the post-June cuts, but also Carl Lawson, someone that's been injured but has a ton of upside. He's sitting out there. Probably snag him for $3 or $4 million. That'll be a different video I do after the draft, after some of these needs are filled. But I'm 100% with you. In fact, I want to kind of hit on that. Did you see the news on Taj Washington and the interview he had about Caleb Williams. Did you see that yesterday?
No, I didn't. But real quick, isn't Tyler Boyd still out there available to sign? I mean, I'm not sure if we have the cap space to do so, but you can still go out there and sign a receiver too. There's a couple guys out there still that haven't gotten contracts.
Yeah, I don't think that's something we do this year. This is just my opinion, but he is still out there. There's a couple of wide receiver options out there. I think we'd go more of a lower level one if we did.
Right.
Just because of the value that we have. And if Keenan Allen doesn't re-sign, we'd probably go after a big name next year. That's kind of where I am with that. I don't think we'll target wide receiver, if not in the draft. But in his interview, Taj Washington gave some insight on Caleb Williams. I thought it was pretty interesting because I'm someone that needs to be won over by Caleb Williams still. I accept that that's where we're going. I accept that we're taking him 1-1, and I don't hate it. The more I look into him, the more I'm actually loving what I'm seeing. The fact that on 3rd and 4th down, the entire time he's been at USC, he never threw a single interception, and that's clutch. That's something that Matt Eberflus talked about we need in a quarterback. So I'm seeing more and more that I like. But Taj Washington said, and I don't have it quoted here. This is just because you brought him up that I'm thinking of this. He said, Caleb is that bubbly. He's social media. He's funny. He's personable. But when it comes down to game day, don't talk to him because he gets in the zone and he's not fun to be around. He's just down to business. And I kind of like that because that's one of the things that I've seen. He's on social media. He's on Twitter. He's interacting. And I was like, okay, here's someone that's too involved. He's too Hollywood. But if that's the way he is, that's kind of how I was. I wrestled and I played multiple sports. I wrestled. I played football. And when I wrestled, that's how it was. I was kind of a fun guy. I was, just had a good time. But then when it came time to game day, like I was irritable. Like people wouldn't want to talk to me because I had to get myself in the zone. And I like competitors like that. I like guys that really can focus in and make it all about that it's all about the game. What are some of your thoughts on Caleb Williams? I haven't talked to you about Caleb Williams. We've just kind of gone over the fact that we've accepted that he's going to be QB1. It's what's happening 99%. Even if the Commanders offered a Herschel Walker type trade at this point, I don't think we would take it because Brian Poles has locked in and said, this is our quarterback. This is who we're going with. What are your thoughts on Caleb Williams?
I don't know if Evie Beardown Davis is still in the chat or not, but man, she knows me and her went back and forth on Facebook quite a bit. I came to that realization fairly early on. It's just the situation at hand. When you look at him as a prospect, he's a extremely good prospect. I know there were a lot of narratives out there about him, whether it's him being involved on social media or whatnot. Part of that is this youth generation too that's coming up. They're all involved. They're all on social media. Yeah. And as far as I know some things were said about his father, his family life, this and that. They're all very involved too. That's why you hear a lot of things about he puts more pressure on himself than anything else, because even outside of the games, his family kind of puts pressure on him to be a good quarterback, and they're very involved with him too. And when you look at the tape, not only is there a lot of quantity of it, he played for 3-4 years, and I know for 2 different teams, but a lot of it is very impressive. He's going through, when I look at college tape specifically, and I try and look at quarterbacks, I try and just look at things that I think will translate to the NFL. And that's really my main concern. I know there's a lot of narratives, his team wasn't that good. They didn't beat this. They didn't beat that. I don't really follow any of that. None of that matters to me. At the end of the day, it is a team sport, right? So when I look at just the quarterback and the quarterback alone, his footwork's really nice. He's going through his reads. There's plenty of times where he's gone through his first read during his drop back. He's in control on the field a lot. Like you mentioned, not throwing interceptions. There's a lot of stuff where, when he's rolling out, it's not this run around without a game plan type of situation. No, he's running out. He's running out of the pocket with a purpose. He knows exactly what he's going to do. He knows exactly where he's going to throw that ball, and it's like clockwork, and it's very impressive to see. His release time is very quick. I mean, he gets rid of the ball like that. And that's what you like to see. There's plenty of plays where he's even rolling out to the sideline, and you think he's going out, and just out of nowhere, the ball's just gone. And that translates to the NFL a lot. And so I think he checks a ton of boxes. I think that's why you initially heard that narrative too, that like, hey, he is the best prospect since Andrew Luck. yeah, there's not very many flaws in his game. You can talk about how he passes up some early reads, but usually that winds up with a big play, and he passes that read up because he knows he's got the bigger play. So, like I said, it's very hard to sit there and pick him apart. And at the end of the day, moving on from Justin Fields, it's like the second we had pick one, I was just kind of like, uh-oh, like that's it. You're not going to sit here and outweigh potential in the NFL. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at, we talked about draft value and things like that. What would a team give up for to trade up for pick one versus what Fields got traded for, right? So that lets you know exactly where the NFL stands for value-wise on what Fields has done versus what the potential of Caleb Williams is. And so, yeah, it became very clear to me that that's going to be probably, the way that you're going to move forward. And luckily for us, he is such a good prospect because, there's been guys before that you hear, are going to go 1-1. I mean, even Trevor Lawrence last year, or not last year, even Trevor Lawrence in the Justin Fields draft, he's the only one left out of those quarterbacks that's starting on the team he's at. So, it's a tough position to get right. It is, but one thing's for sure is you have to get it right. And, with the situation we're in, the way we acquired our pick, it's not even our pick. It's house money. We've already won that trade. If you could top it off with Caleb Williams, that might be the cherry on top of the sundae, and it might just put everything together. That position's so impactful. It makes everybody around them better, makes the linemen better when you're able to get rid of the ball quick. That puts a lot less sacks on their stat sheet. They're happy because they want to get paid, so they don't want sacks on their stat sheet, and same thing, with the wide receivers and everything. And so a quarterback can really pull a whole team together. And the expectation for Caleb is going to be huge. Like I said, I know they say he puts more pressure on himself. Well, the pressure is going to be huge. There's going to be a lot for him to live up to here. And, you best believe, even though I came to that realization early on, moving forward, I'm still going to be pretty critical of his errors and his mistakes and whatnot. Yeah, we're going to be looking at a rookie quarterback in his rookie year. So, you got to give some cushion and whatnot. And just like any other quarterback, I'll give him 2-3 years to properly sit there and have enough, game film out there to be able to study and make an accurate decision on what he is. But the expectation for him is to be that guy. So I am excited.
You just hit a lot of topics with one nail. you just nailed so many things, and there's so many things to digest in what you just said.
Sorry, man. I don't usually do live. That's why I edit my stuff. So
you're good. I love it. This is exactly what we want to go into. I'm not giving him time. He just inherited one of the greatest teams for a number one overall pick to ever come into. On top of that, he's generational, right? My only concern with him, here's the thing, the more I watch tape, the more I like him. The more I break down advanced metrics, the more I like him. I'm seeing why he's generational. In the beginning, I was very critical of him. Of anybody on Facebook, of anybody on YouTube, of anybody on Twitter, I was probably one of the most critical of him. And now I'm coming around. And part of it is because I had to accept the fact that Justin Fields is gone. Justin Fields, I was a Justin Fields homer. I was a Justin Fields fanboy, whatever they want to call you. The Justin Fields cult, I was the Justin Fields cult. That was me, 100%. I saw Justin's advanced metrics. I saw it wasn't all on him. I was also very realistic of where Justin was lacking. He did have some flaws. And just like you said, at this position at the NFL level, this is the one position teams are willing to mortgage the future on. They're willing to leverage everything to get it right. And that's why it was a business decision. Business is business. I don't think a team is going to go south by giving Justin Fields a chance. In fact, I wholeheartedly believe he's going to beat out Russell Wilson, that he's going to, not maybe to start the year, that this isn't a Steelers podcast, so it doesn't really matter, but I think he's going to win that job over. And we're going to get a 4th round pick instead of a 6th round pick because he's going to play over 51% of the snaps. So I like that.
He has a career in the NFL. He does.
Yes,
yeah, I'm not 100%. Saying he doesn't. He definitely does.
And I don't think it's a backup role. I think it's as a starter. But what it comes down to is Caleb Williams' potential. His potential is higher. He's a truly generational talent that teams are willing to roll the dice on. And like you said, it was gifted to us because of what Carolina did, because of the position we were put in. We got this free gift that we didn't have to trade up. Like with Justin Fields, we traded up and we gave away a future 1st and a future 4th and another 3rd rounder that same year. We gave up a lot to come up and get him. Not a crazy amount. He was the 4th quarterback taken in that draft, but coming from 20 to 9, It took a lot, or 20 to 11. It took a lot to come up and get it. So with that position, you nailed it on the head. This is a position that we have to take that risk on, and now he's built the team up around him in a way. Why would we temper expectations? You say I'm going to give him 2 or 3 years. Why shouldn't that expectation be there year one? When you saw guys like Andrew Luck, who came into a very similar situation with a team that wasn't top of the league, but also wasn't bottom of the barrel. They clearly tanked. If there was ever a tank year where it was proven that a team tanked, it was the Peyton Manning tank year. They clearly tanked to get Andrew Luck, and then they had a great year with him. Why would we temper those expectations in Chicago?
So I think it truly just comes down to what your definition of expectations is, because there's a lot of them out there, right? So as far as Bears records, I fully expect him to be the best Bears rookie quarterback ever. That's what, 2,300 yards, 11 touchdowns. I think that's no problem. As far as like throwing for 4,000 yards, I think he'll get there. I don't necessarily expect that the first year though, right? And man, but there was a quarterback. I think Cam Newton did it his first year. I think he might have thrown for 4,000 yards his first year. So it's not an impossible task by any means. However, my expectations are 3,000 plus yards, hopefully around that 3,500 yard range, 20 plus touchdowns, and hopefully half the amount of interceptions or less. And those aren't low expectations by any means, right? So those are Bears rookie record setting expectations. I'm just saying, it takes these guys some time to develop in this league and get better. So I think he will be a great passer in this league, but I think his first year, he's going to wow us just based off our history and what we know. But as far as like from an NFL point of view, I don't think he's going to go out there and necessarily, throw for 4,000 plus yards and do all these incredible things. That's a high bar to set. Is it possible? Sure, he does have that type of pedigree. Like you said, the talent is there on this team. However, as we discussed, throughout the last 40 minutes of the show, the talent is there up front. It's not there in the depth, right? So you are just a couple injuries away from having some of that talent, kind of not look that great again, right? So it all depends on how the season shakes up, and you never go without injuries. So you have to take that into consideration too. And I'm, like I said, I'm very excited to see the kid play in a Bears uniform, regular season, full speed game. I want to see how he processes it. But I do understand also that just like with any player, there is a learning curve, and I expect every year to progress and be better and better and better. So.
Well, we know week one we won't be playing the Packers. So thank heavens, Caleb Williams, you won't be facing the Packers week one. You get a chance to break in a little bit before we get them on the schedule. The Packers, as we know, are going to be down in Brazil. I think it's the Eagles they're playing week one. That was announced by the league. That's about all we know so far. We know one game the Bears will be playing in England. I assume we're going to be playing the Jaguars. That's just the way it always ends up working out. Teams play the Jaguars in. It turns in from a Bears home game, which is technically what it's going to be, to whoever they play over there. If it's the Jaguars, it'll be a Jaguars home game.
Can I address?
So he'll have a chance to break in before he. What was that?
Can I address a comment real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Comments. McFact said, "I don't care about stats. Playoffs is the expectation." I just want to kind of just dive in on that a little bit because, I agree. Especially about the first part. I know I laid out there's some stats and some numbers and this and that, but like I said, you have to define your expectations and you define it with numbers. But truly, I do it for me. It's a real big eye test here this first year. I want to see how comfortable he looks. Like I said, I want to see how he processes. And playoffs is the expectation. As long as the team stays healthy, definitely they have a shot at making the playoffs this year. And that should be the expectation. So I just wanted to kind of point that one out because it kind of stuck out to me. And I agree. Definitely.
Yeah, you nailed it. And here, Evie as well, she mentioned we were playoff ready at the end of 2023. Completely agree. Even though we didn't make the playoffs, and really we lost to the Packers, who was also a playoff team. Other games we played down that stretch, the last 6-7 games, we were playing like a playoff team. So we were definitely right there in it. There's no reason we shouldn't expect the playoffs. Do you expect us at this point, or is it something we have to wait for to win a playoff game? Or is getting there good enough when we were playing at playoff level at the end of last year. Now we've highly improved the roster with wide receiver, at least with a couple of key positions, center, wide receiver, and quarterback in the draft. Do you see us winning a playoff game, or is it too early to say?
I mean, it's definitely too early to say. You can't. That's a far out prediction to make. So I like to take things one step at a time. For me, I know in this division that the Lions are the powerhouse right now. I don't see their window being open extremely long. They're still definitely a really good team this year, but I think in the longevity of things, I think they will kind of fall back down to earth. To me, it's still the Packers. We got to go out there and we got to beat the Packers, and that's my first goal. I mean, I know I'm kind of going back to the whole Lovie Smith thing, right? Like, let's beat the Packers twice, and then let's take it 4 games at a time, right? Like, let's just win at least 2 out of every 4. And some of them you're going to win 3 out of 4, and let's piece it together and get there first. And the one thing I've looked at throughout the history of the NFL too a lot of the times is defensive teams, as we know from being Bears fans too, they tend to spike, right? So like defense is such a it's hard to rely on it. You could have the same defense year to year, and it could be a top 10 defense and really fall out and be a middle of the pack defense the next year, right? And so that's something hard to just rely on and be set on. That's why you constantly need to be adding pieces and talent to the defense. Guys get a little slower and whatnot too, lose a step. It makes a big difference. However, offensive-led teams in the NFL, those are the ones that tend to make the playoffs year after year after year after year, right? When you have a good offense, you're making the dance year after year. And as long as you keep giving yourself chances, it's going to work out once, hopefully. I mean, I go back to Peyton Manning. He was the quarterback that couldn't win one until he did win one. Now he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, right? So
took him 9 years, though.
Narrative exists until it doesn't exist anymore, right? So it's a lot easier you give yourself more chances if you're just making the playoffs more consistently. That's why, I kind of like the balance that the Bears have right now. We are a very good defensive team, but when it comes to pay that quarterback the money and dump those financials into the offensive side of the football, that offense better be rolling by then. That's why that position is so important too and whatnot. So yeah, I think our defense is definitely good enough to carry this team. And our offense is good enough to kind of now accompany it, and hopefully we can see some good things from the Bears this next year. But I am going to take it, a small window at a time, though. I can't let myself get too excited or too down, or I've been through that too many times. So,
well, I'm with you. I think it's realistic for fans to say we should expect to see what we saw at the end of the year. Less than 20 points allowed a game is very hard to do, but the Bears were stacking that game after game after game. Yeah, you're going to have a bad game now and then. Even against the Packers, we lost, but we didn't allow them to score more than 20. But now we're making moves to add pieces on the offense. I think it's realistic for fans to say, okay, we shouldn't even expect a win week 1. Now we don't know who the schedule is yet. The schedule won't be released until after the draft, and so we don't know who the schedule is. But if Caleb Williams is a rookie, that's where I can say I'll give a little leeway. The first couple weeks, he's got to get himself adjusted to the NFL. And you said, his game translates to the NFL. The biggest thing I'm worried about is he does leave that pocket and he plays around in a very organized way for him, in a way where he can get the ball out quick, flick it, get it down 60 yards, get it down 5 yards, get it down 15 yards. But he's not been dealing with NFL-level defensive ends and defensive interior every single week. And that's where I think the big adjustment's going to be. Week 1, when that snap happens, that first snap, say we're facing the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are on our schedule. They aren't on our schedule this year. But just say you're facing Max Crosby week 1, and all of a sudden that guy's in your face in less than a second. How is he going to adjust as opposed to the college level where it's not quite the same level of talent? Yeah, he faced a lot of stacked guys. He faced Latu. He faced some of these guys on a weekly basis, but not at the same level as having 300-pound defensive interiors that are both beefed up and 2 solid defensive end every week. Do you think that's something we should worry about with his game and how he does escape the pocket a little more than normal quarterbacks do?
I mean, I actually think you're completely right. And, that is the development there. That is what it's going to be. And, like I said, he seems very in control. And that's one of the things I want to see from him as far as the eye test goes is comfort, control. it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because now the windows are a lot smaller in the NFL than they are in college. Now, you might not be able to do those plays, and it might take him a couple tries to learn, like, hey, these guys are so much bigger, so much faster. They're running me down. I don't have enough time, or my guys, aren't getting as open down the field and whatnot. However, when you look at his game all around, he's very capable of going through reads, hitting guys early, and doing all that. So he's just going to have to adjust his game to understand how to succeed and how to make completions early on. And that's what quarterback development is, man. Just sit there, gain some confidence, string together some good games, and slowly, it's great that you have the talent to be able to do those things that are flashy and whatnot. That'll come. I look at a guy like Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of funny. Patrick Mahomes' average yards per play actually have gone down year to year. He's actually just learned to just dump the ball off a little bit faster and trust the guys a little bit more instead of making big plays all the time. He has. He's taken that, and you could look at it and call that a regression, but it's not. It's actually just very smart. Tom Brady played till he was 45 doing that exact thing, just taking exactly what the defenses give him. And Patrick Mahomes talked about how he couldn't even read a defense in his first year, in his second year. Like, it took him a while, and now he's sitting there manipulating defenders. Now he's sitting there waiting for guys to crawl up and know he can, hit them on a big play behind him and whatnot. So that takes a while for those guys to develop and be able to do that. So, yeah, I definitely think, we'll see some of that rollout stuff pretty early. I don't know if it's going to be successful or not. I'm interested to see, but yeah, he's going to learn. The NFL will teach him. And if he's as good as, everything that's out there, all the analysts say he is and whatnot, and as good as he was in college, and if all that does translate, then he'll learn. It might take a little bit of time, but it'll come.
Perfect. I agree with you, and I think he's really smart with the ball. He is able. Now, I say that, but the one weakness he had that was similar to Justin Fields is he holds it loose when he's out there playing around. So I think that's the first thing they'll hit on with him. They'll really get him. They've gone over his film. They know they're gonna hit those things right off the bat and say, hey, look, this is a different game. You're gonna have a lot more peanut punches in the NFL. You're gonna have a lot of guys that know what they're doing. Tuck that thing, protect it, make sure you're on the up and up every single play. But he'll learn. He will, and I think he's very smart. He's very intelligent. We're running a little short on time. I want to do one more thing with you while you're here, and then we'll see if there's a couple questions. So start laying some of your questions there for you. If you guys haven't checked out, again, this is Paul with Bearskifilm. Check out his channel on YouTube. Great channel. I love some of the highlight plays he does. He really pulls some great stuff out of them. So start putting a couple questions there in the comments. We'll hit those at the end. But I want to pull up. All right, so here is, let's get rid of this banner. All right, so here is some of the consensus top 25. So to me, we're not trading down that far. But you see on the left, there's mock draft database. In the middle, there's NFL draft buzz. This is my official top 25 in order of talent, not where I think they'll be taken. This is according to talent in this draft, which guys I think are the most talented guys in this draft. And I know some of these are way out of order with what some other people might say. I'm really hot on some guys. In fact, right outside of this, I think around my 26 or 27 is Tyler Nubin, who's completely fallen down a lot of draft boards because his RAS score was so small, but I think he's a special safety talent. We're not looking at safety anymore. But to you, if we're trading back a little bit, we've kind of both established that we both want to do a small trade down. Who are some of these key guys that you're okay trading back with, knowing that we can still snag some of these? List off 5 or 10 guys you'd be comfortable taking between 9 and 15-ish.
Yeah, definitely I agree with your orders a lot, especially when it comes to the quarterbacks. Got them the same order myself. Listen, I've had a lot of people show love for Joe Alt. I like Joe Alt as well. He may be one of those guys that if he's available there, you only have to drop back a spot or two or something to still be able to get him. Definitely. Dallas Turner, same thing. Jared Verse is, I think a likely candidate of who you might actually wind up with. Olu Fashanu as well has gotten a lot of love from people, and I can't pronounce it. Latu.
Yeah,
Latu. I always just say Latu, but yep.
Olu Fashanu played with Caleb Williams in high school. You know that, right?
I did
He was
not.
his
No,
teammate.
I did not.
Yeah, he was his teammate in high school.
Interesting.
So that's kind of a funny connection that could end up working out for the Bears. But we didn't bring him in for a top 30 visit, which makes me kind of curious on that one. But sorry, Latu has always been. He's been my favorite defensive end all year. You see him at the top of my defensive end rankings. It's just the whole medical thing, which I'm not as concerned about, but teams might be. They
might be. But yeah, it depends if he checks out. They might not. So it all depends. But and then just based off draft, like we said, team needs. I know Byron Murphy is another name that makes it in there all the time too. So that that's a good handful of guys that I think I'd be happy with coming out of the first round for sure.
Nice. Yeah. All right, let's go check out a couple comments here real quick. Let's remove that one. All right, I'm going to ask the first question before I look at some other ones, see if anybody's put any questions in there. So draft night, what is your ideal scenario? You mentioned to trade back. At 1, is your ideal scenario Caleb Williams? And then 2, if we do trade back, who do you want more than anybody with a small trade back? Who do you want to fall to us at, say, 13 if we end up trading with the Raiders? Because to me, that's the most likely trade scenario right now. They're going to want to jump ahead of Denver. They're going to want to jump ahead of Minnesota. They might be willing to give us a little more, like 13-44, and even a late rounder, a 6th or 7th rounder to sweeten it up a little bit. Who do you want to fall to us at 13 if we trade back a little bit?
I mean, the dream scenario would be like Dallas Turner. Yeah. Really, if he for whatever reason were to fall, yeah, give me him. Like I said, I'd be very happy with the offensive tackle position being addressed there as well. But mainly, yeah. I mean, oh man, I don't know if you could hear that. My kid is screaming up there.
You're all good. I've had to take off. I don't know if it came through or not.
I heard it, but I was like, oh man, she's got an attitude. So yeah, no, definitely that guy. Like I said, I think we're gonna wind up with Jared Verse though, because he's gonna go. But if Latu's available there too, I would be very happy with that pick as well. So
I'm with you, man. Hey, do you need to take off for your little one?
Yeah, I do. Wife's home, so gotta get going.
All good. Appreciate you coming on, man. We're gonna wrap it up here in a second. I'll fill a couple of these, but guys, check him out, Paul with Bearskifilm. Really appreciate you coming on today, man. Really good to have you on. Thanks so much.
Yep, had a great time. Thanks for your time.
Of course. All right, we'll hit a couple of these, and then we're going to wrap it up, guys. I wanted to keep it right around an hour. Thanks for tuning in, all of you for tuning in. This has gone a lot better than the last live.
The last one was a little bit of a shit show, to be honest. So we'll hit a couple of these. All right. What are the best wide receivers you expect to be available at 75? This is a rough range for wide receivers. I think all your top guys are gone. I wouldn't expect us to be taking one at 75. If someone fell to us that crazy shouldn't fall to us at 75, like if Roman Wilson is there, I've seen some people say Johnny Wilson. I haven't been hot on Johnny Wilson because of his drops, but he could fit that X receiver role. He's got a long stride. He's obviously very tall. He uses his body well, but he just has some problem with some drops. If he can control those drops, I would be very happy with us taking Johnny Wilson at 75. He's not my favorite. I would rather use that for a tackle position or to be able to trade up from 75 to snag someone that we want, like Xavier Legette in the 40s. Really package something up, because we do have 10 picks next year. 9, but potentially 10. 9 picks next year. Be able to package one of those up and come up into the 40s. Trade a second rounder from next year to get a wide receiver that really you see the high potential in to be able to come up from. All right. Verse slotted around 12, 13. Would not mind him either. I'm on board with you. I like Latu. I think teams might be a little bit worried about his medicals. I think that's the biggest reason the Bears brought him in for a top 30 visit, was to get a feel on those medicals. He's played really well the last 2 years. I mean, solid, like top tier solid. And no issues the last 2 years. But anytime you have that infusion in your neck, how long will that last? How long will it work out? And I think that's what the Bears want to get a handle of. Okay, let's see a couple other here. What's best, 4 high picks, 5 evenly distributed picks, or 6 picks, 2 high and 4 low? Well, I think we're out of a better position than all of that. I think we can end up with 3 high picks, but obviously 4 high picks. 4 high picks would be the best in this scenario. because the higher the pick, the higher the probability of them working out. Depends on what your definition of high is, but I did a couple mock drafts yesterday. I don't remember what the title of that video was. You can go check it out, though. It was just talking about mock draft options and top 30 update, I think is what it was called. But there is a scenario where we could trade down from 9, trade up from 122, and get 4 or 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. And I'm all on board with that. If we have to give up a little draft capital next year to get 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, 3 in the first 2 rounds, I'm all on board with that, 100%. I like this. Latu's neck fusion as medical advances, they have become more successful than not. I actually had a broken back and issues there, and I have no issues now. But I'm not a pro athlete at the highest level. Much earlier in my life, 20 years ago. So I'm with you. Things have come along. I hope that all that pans out. If Ricky Pearsall lands at 70, if he lasts till 75, I can see us snagging him. I just don't see him lasting to 75. 75 would be a great range to pick up Pearsall. Same thing. We could trade up just a little bit for him as well. That could be something we do. So, all right, one more time. Here is the updated top 30. This is what we ended up having. 32 of them total, 5 local. There could, of course, be some that we didn't see happen, some that went under the radar. But this is pretty in-depth and accurate. Took a lot to compile this together. Kind of broken up into tiers of where we would draft them. And you see that same thing, the 3rd round, 75. I'd see maybe us reaching for one there or trading back. You could see a running back being taken there, but I don't see that being a need for us. I think we brought them in just in case. But if Kieran Amajabi lasts till the 50s or 60s, I can see us trading up to get him. Offensive tackle. Same with Ben Sennett. Ben Sennett would be a stud to be able to snag in that range. So 100% options we have. It's going to be fun to see. I am going live on draft night. For those who missed the beginning, Swifty had a little family emergency, and I don't say that as in go, is everything okay? He's fine. It's just priority. I should say family priority that took precedence last minute. He hit me up. He called me on the phone and said, dude, can I make it up to you? And I was like, dude, family first, always. So that's the theme of this channel. Family first, 100%. So he's probably going to pop in on draft night. I got to put this one up. Bears enjoyer. Personally, I think if Caleb Williams falls to 1, we take him 100%. I think you're onto something, man. I think you nailed it. You just nailed the prediction of the draft. You just nailed it. That was good. That made me laugh. So, all right, guys, we are going to wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for everyone for being here. Special thanks to Paul from Bearskifilm. If you guys haven't checked out his channel, go do it. He's got some good stuff. I like the way he lays out some of his film breakdown. So go check that out. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. 1 week away from right now is the draft. We're going to know who we're taking at 1, 9, 13, 18, who we're taking in the first round for sure. I'm going live the entire first round. I'm going live probably about a half hour beforehand. Come yuck it up. I will have some graphics on players. I'm going to be doing a little pregame show stuff. We'll try to get some stuff to be able to get you entertained and be able to enjoy it. Tune in for the reactions, if nothing else. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be able to have the new Bears of the future after next Thursday. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. And until next time, as always, bear down.